today? Excellent. Show of hands for those who are considering implementing a technology solution over the next couple of years.
No, you're supposed to switch, right?
A few of you,
Stay there.
right? So the main catalyst, why organizations move from traditional PowerPoint and Excel to a technology solution, is typically because they achieve burnout. Burnout with managing paper, trying to maintain one version of the truth, lack of efficiencies and efficient access to data to make decisions about the business, driving transparency up to corporate governance, to the board, as well as down to the individual level. The biggest reason organizations implement technology is to make strategy execution sustainable. A lot of the process that we've been discussing today as well as yesterday is brilliant. But unless if it lasts time over time, year over year, it does not yield the results that you're looking for. Technology helps enable that. It is not a silver bullet, but it is a key enabler to making this process sustainable over time. So my name is Kent Smack. I've worked with, over the past 17 years with Drs. Kaplan and Norton, many organizations such as yourself, experts at Palladium, to launch and deploy Executive Strategy Manager application. So I've invited 3 panelists today to join me on stage and engage with you through a discussion panel around key challenges with technology, key advantages, any questions that you have around how technology is used today. So I'll just turn to the panel for a moment and ask them to each introduce themselves, as well as provide a brief introduction about what role they play within their organization, as well as how long they've been using technology. Rob?
I'm Robin Wales. I'm the Chief of Strategy Management at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and we've been using technology for about 3 years. Before that, I worked at the Defense Logistics Agency, and we used it there as well.
Hi, I'm Ian Boyd. I'm a Manager of Strategy and Balanced Scorecard at IQ Navigator. IQ Navigator is a Denver-based tech company. IQN has been using the Balanced Scorecard and ESM for about 2 years now to manage our strategy execution framework and all the measurements and initiatives that go into that.
And my name is Cole Price. I work for Waddell & Reed. I am a strategy analyst, and we've worked with ESM for 2.5 years, ESM 5 for 2.5 years, and then we transferred over in January to ESM 6, and we've worked on it since then. We use it as a tool.
So Cole, what would you say is the biggest advantage to utilizing technology for executing strategy at Waddell & Reed?
I think the number one thing is it's a tool that provides the communication of the initiatives and the directives of our overall goals for the company. And so that's one of the major incentives to use this as a tool, simply because the communication across all departments and how the cross-departmental they communicate together and work together to succeed and be successful in the overall goals for the year. I think that's the number one reason why we use it. It's easy. Good.
Ian?
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Just the challenges of maintaining disparate or all these separate reports. When I first showed up at IQ Navigator, we were trying to kind of encourage a culture of managing by measures and by strategic initiatives, and there must have been a half dozen different reporting systems and a half dozen different ways of reporting within those systems and different frequencies. So being able to control that, have it all in one place in a central location is an enormous advantage. I mean, it's the number one thing.
Robin, how about your experience here?
Agree with everything that Cole and Ian said. In addition, we've talked a lot during the conference about accountability and transparency, and having this software allows for both accountability and transparency, and it promotes it. So we have objective champions for all the strategic objectives on our scorecard, and their name is right there at the top of the screen, when we have our strategy review meetings, that they are in charge of making sure this objective comes to fruition. And everyone in the organization can see who's in charge of working these strategic objectives. So the accountability, the transparency, along with the ease of reporting, able to do trend analysis over time, all of that contributes.
So the picture is not always that rosy. So I'll turn to the corollary of that. What are some of the challenges that you face? And perhaps if the audience could also think about some of the challenges, and we can also turn to the audience as well. But let's first start with the panel. Go ahead, Robin.
I would say the number one biggest challenge is change, and change is hard, and people have worked with PowerPoint for a very, very long time, and so now, especially the older generation, moving towards something more automated that they haven't used for a long period of time. So change is hard, but it's interesting because the last time we had a big scorecard refresh, I gave them a choice. I said, hey, we can put something straight into the solution, or I created a PowerPoint deck that looked just like the screen from ESM. I said, or you can fill it out on this PowerPoint deck, and then my team will just do the data entry for you. And interestingly enough, 70% of the people chose to enter it directly into ESM when they were given a choice between ESM and PowerPoint.
Interesting statistic there.
When I hear Robin talk about accountability, it hits home immediately. Really, accountability and engagement. If somebody fails to send an Excel file or a PowerPoint file over, it's not quite as visible as not having something within a centralized reporting system updated for a major strategic review meeting. It's certainly been a challenge for IQ Navigator to get to the point where we truly do have objective champions. I'm proud to say that we're there today, but it wasn't something that we started with initially. And certainly having a technology in place to sort of facilitate that sense of ownership among a senior leadership team that would be responsible for reporting on a strategy it's been invaluable. But as I hear Robin talking about that, I kind of smile knowingly and think about the challenge of accountability just being a huge part of this.
And Cole?
As far as change is concerned, our biggest, I think, hurdle was changing from the ESM 5 platform to the 6 platform. And previously we only asked them, give us a percentage of what your initiative, how is it performing today, and a color, to when we go into ESM 6, we're asking them to be more robust in their reporting process, and them having to understand that they need to add this information not only for transparency, and so that's part of the change, right? But one of the things is when we get together on a monthly basis is we're able to see which department is lagging in their initiative and to see if other departments can aid in that process of them completing their initiative. So not only is it part of that transparency, but the hardest part is with the change of adding that information, there was a sense of, why are we putting so much information into this platform? We do this in all these other places, but we started those other places started to dwindle as we used the platform as as more robust and actually giving us a sense of where we are in our initiatives and goals. And so I think that was important in them understanding what the platform can do and how it can be more effective and efficient in letting us know where we stand as an entire corporation. So that was important.
Excellent. I turn to the audience. Any challenges or advantages that you see with utilizing technology today for managing strategy execution? And while you're thinking up those questions, I'll turn back to the panel and ask you, how do you, so you've got your monthly or quarterly reviews, but how do you keep the team engaged between those reviews and keep strategy kind of ever present? Because, talking about it, 4 times a year, the quarterly review is great. It's better than not at all, but it's still not optimal. So how do you get the team engaged between those review meetings? And does technology play a role in that?
So I'm going to answer that first. The first number one thing is we had a change in guard for our president and CEO last year. Our previous one had retired, and so we have a new president and CEO, and he was very dynamic, and he wants to be innovative, and he wants to change how the corporation runs as a whole. So it was, number one was, it was senior level buy-in. That's number one. They have to believe in strategy. They have to believe in using technology as a form of communication and reporting. And so that was number one. And the second is when we had total and complete buy-in. What happened is in the very first meetings, he said, this is a live, acting, living platform. It doesn't end even if we stop and we cut off the month to go to the next month. You should constantly be making updates as updates occur so that there's never, oh, I have my deadline and I have to get this information in. As the evolution of their project and their initiative continues to evolve and grow and succeed, they need to continue to add to the platform. So there's never an end or a beginning for us. It's always. And so I think that's number one. We just have a monthly meeting just to touch base to make sure that open communication is there in between our departments, and that if other departments can be engaged in a certain initiative that needs to happen.
Ian.
You know, I'm thinking about the best way to answer this is probably that we've really tried to create a culture of fun around reporting, which sounds a bit silly, but it's something that, you know, managing with measures was not part of the culture of IQ Navigator in the early days of using the system. And so we created games and competitions for, you know, who's creating the best measures, who's adjusting them properly, putting the best forecasts in place. So that kind of thing where, you know, we're reporting out of the system off cycle, not within a monthly or quarterly strategy review meeting, and also not just at the senior level, from mid-management on down, to create kind of games and a culture of saying, you know, we care about this stuff, and we're going to put this up on the walls and have a good time with it. So this is something that's happening as much outside the system as it is in it, but that's one way to kind of keep folks engaged with it, which is it's a critical priority, because as soon as you start skipping meetings or not updating things, you really put your entire framework in jeopardy. So,
right.
That's how I'd answer that.
Show of hands, who else uses games or other fun activities as part of the review cycle? Anyone? I think it's a great creative idea.
I really like actually that. Was not.
I remember.
I have to give credit where it was due. It came from. This was kind of a pet project of a senior leader, and I was a skeptic, 100%, especially because I was the one going to be administrating it. But it ended up being something that really took hold and really galvanized people to care about something that on the surface could seem a little bit dry. But we did. We incented it through competitions and games and putting things up on the wall to say, here's what we care about, here's what our strategy is. Oh, and by the way, if you want to read more about this, you all have access to ESM. You can go in there and read the latest on the strategy reports. So that really, it is something that took hold.
And I do recall an older case study that I think Bob and Dave spoke about many years ago, Ann Taylor. They had some various board games that they would build out around strategy and engage the different teams and kind of create a competition around it to help educate and communicate that strategy. So it's an innovative idea. Do we have any questions from the audience for the panel? No, you guys are quite quiet. We're between you and lunch, I understand. So Robin, how about you?
I'll give you a couple examples. One, going back to transparency and accountability, It's very important to our agency that we work across the organization and break down the silos. And as such, we've encouraged all of our objective champions to form objective teams where they have members from across the organization participating in these teams. And they should be having these team meetings regularly throughout the quarter, not just right before our strategy review meetings. So one of the things we've done is, because the software is tailorable, up front, right underneath the objective champion's name, we create a box that said team members. And so now everyone can see all of the team members assigned to that objective and know and expect to have regular meetings about working on that objective and making progress towards it.
That's a really good idea. I'm stealing that.
Another way that it's come in extremely useful is working in the Department of Defense. We always have a boss, and our boss in the Pentagon developed a new strategy at their level, and they wanted to know how DTRA's measures supported their strategy at OSD. And because we had everything already in ESM, we were able to simply just download an Excel spreadsheet and link our measures directly to our parent organization. And it saved so much time being able just to do a download rather than to go out and do a data call and work with everyone. It was all housed right there.
So speaking of data calls, how do you prepare for the strategy review meeting? What are the series of activities that you'll do prior to leading up for that actual strategy review meeting?
So in my organization, I assigned a team member to every objective champion to help them, because at least where I work, the folks that are the objective champions, strategy is not their career field. They're scientists, they have a lot of work that they're doing, they're very focused on operations. So having someone they can count on in the strategy department to be a partner with them as they go through the process has proved to be very, very useful. So one of my team members is assigned to them. They facilitate scheduling their team meetings. I put out an official data call for them to populate the software, because that is part of it. You need to have some data in there to work with. And we help prepare them for the strategy review meeting. And one of the things we did differently this time to help have a more strategic level discussion is we asked them to address 3 things. We asked them to talk about the 3 priorities that they want to achieve within this objective. We asked them to talk about their 3 biggest challenges. And then we asked them to talk about what could go wrong. And we introduced these types of questions and discussions into our strategy review meetings. It prompted the other directorates to help. So when they talked about, geez, what could go wrong, or what are my biggest challenges, that opened the door for more cross-organization discussion. So we try to help them by preparing them with types of discussion questions, offering assistance. Hey, if you're not good at automation, just email us. We'll do data entry for you. Again, we offer it, but they still prefer to do it themselves. So it takes that hurdle out of the equation.
And are you generating a pre-read document prior to the actual review meeting and disseminating that, or is the review meeting actually facilitated directly in technology? How do you handle that?
It's facilitated directly in technology.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing as well.
Yeah, we do a call, through an email to have them make sure they've updated everything for the month. But again, we use it as a living, breathing document, so a platform, so it's automatically, we know that it's already done. We just give them a heads up, and then we just pull the Gantt chart out of the platform. And we do have metrics, because we're a financial institution, that will feed into the individual objective or the initiative. And we will get all the way down into, sometimes granular, into the tasks and milestones that feed up or roll up into the initiatives. But for the most part, that's, we use those, and we don't send them out ahead of time. We just talk during the monthly reporting period. So, but.
And Ian, I just want to come back to you. What is your preparation cycle for the reviews?
This sounds pretty familiar. I think that, having a very established sequence of events, just tactically on how you prepare, a consistency that should be enabled by the structure within the ESM system, the structure of the scorecard, really helps preparation. I'd say the only other comment I'd make on this is that we had a very concerted effort at the beginning of the year to really spread around the responsibility for updating the ESM system, whether that's an associated measure or initiative that are linked to the objectives. Spread that to people beyond the senior level of the business. So what we did is we put a program in place to kind of identify, to work with HR to identify the rising stars within the business, to say it's not a matter of having to update the system. You get to own a single measure. So being able to assign out that responsibility in that way, to almost create it like a little incentive, like you get to be a measure owner, you get to be an initiative owner, it spreads that responsibility from a small core team of senior leaders who already have a lot of demands on their time. But in terms of preparation, I think that's been something that we've seen some success with.
Okay, good. We have a question in the back of the room.
Hi, thanks everyone. If you were going to give someone who is considering implementing a technology platform one piece of advice, what would that one kind of word of suggestion be, or a piece of advice be?
So Cole?
It would be absolutely senior executive level buy-in. If you don't have their support, then no one else is going to follow.
That's 100% correct. The number two thing I'd say is knowing what your objectives, measures, and initiatives are in advance of trying to implement a technology, a reporting platform. Otherwise, there's a lot of shifting, there's a lot of rework that needs to be done to adjust the measures or adjust the initiatives after you've already put them in place. But I would say that senior level support is far and away the number one thing.
And Robin?
I agree, absolutely, 100%.
Okay. So any other questions right now? Yes. Patricia's bringing the mic up to you.
Hi, Steve Rosa from Frontline Strategy. I just wondered, can you quantify the savings from going to a technology, like in terms of time, that sort of thing?
Quantifying the savings, the return on the investment. Robin, you're shaking your head.
Oh my gosh, I had an Army major that would spend 2 days assembling PowerPoint charts and manually inserting over 1,000 hyperlinks. So that right there, I saved 2 full man days just in assembling PowerPoint charts. That was just in my office. I can't imagine other offices.
And we freed up 2 FTEs in our FP&A group as a result of that. They're doing much more interesting things now, as opposed to coordinating what is a very tactical and administrative thing that ESM handles seamlessly.
Yes.
To the level I'm not unsure, but as far as FTEs are concerned, individual departments would give their own individual take on what their update was previously. And when they did that, it was very desperate, right? So they didn't have any continuity between reporting. So a lot of times that our own senior level executive would have to go back and have them defined, where now all is in one place, the message is the same. And so it's unimaginable, the cost savings on it, honestly.
And that's really just on the quantitative side. Qualitatively, there's a lot of value that would be very difficult to put a number to. But
Right.
I can think of a few anecdotes.
Right. So you've always got the naysayers out there, right? Those who are kind of the technology curmudgeons and really have no interest in engaging, possibly in the process, but let alone, not in the technology. How do you handle that? How do you confront that and deal with it? Robin?
I did it by creating a PowerPoint chart, and I said, well, if you'd rather fill out PowerPoint, I'll give you a PowerPoint chart, and I'll just do the data entry for you, and 70% of the people chose not to use the PowerPoint chart.
Right.
So I gave them an alternative, and most of them chose to use ESM instead.
And do you think that there's potentially just a knowledge gap with not feeling comfortable within a piece of technology, or is it potentially exposure of what they may not be doing, and making that transparent to senior leadership?
I think change is just hard. I just think change is hard for them, and it's an easy excuse, well, I just don't know how to use the system, or that's just the first easy thing that comes to mind, rather than I need to think about strategy. You know, it's the thinking. The data entry is very fast. That's not the time-consuming part. The time-consuming part is the thought involved in taking the time to think about strategy.
Ian, how about yourself?
I can't think of any times where I issued ultimatums to people. You know, you must put things into the system. I'm sure I wanted to a couple of times.
Potentially some hand-holding, right?
Oh, there was certainly there was a subset of folks that required the additional hand-holding, especially when this was a brand new effort at IQ Navigator. But I think that after the first series of strategy review meetings, after this was not quite so new anymore, people kind of understood what was involved in both the meetings and the preparation that was required to in advance of the meetings. They saw it as an opportunity to really, speak about strategy, and at the most basic level, look good in front of the leaders within the company, the most senior leadership. So it became a matter of, well, yeah, I think I do want to do those things. So using the system is going to be the most easy way to do that.
So perhaps personalizing it, showing how they can be a positive contributor to strategy and how they can impact it.
That combined with...
so showing the value.
Exactly. Combine that with a great degree of patience, and you've got it.
Well said. And Cole, you?
I think it's the same. I think change is very difficult for people in general, and that's definitely has been a factor in having them, actually be in one of the players within adding the information. I think that one of the major things of these guys putting the information in the individual departments is they didn't recognize the value of strategy because they're so operational and tactical in thought that once they, over time, and I mean not the first month or the 6th month, but maybe about now, 8th, 9th month, they're starting to realize the effect of their operational and tactical actions, how it rolls up into the strategy. And so they start to develop the bigger picture when they didn't maybe think of that in that way at the beginning of the year. So they're starting to realize how important strategy is and how their operational and tactical actions and initiatives and projects play an important part in the overall strategy. And I think that's important.
Great. So we're nearing the end of our panel, and I would just ask any final thoughts or recommendations that you would have for the delegates, especially those who are just embarking on this journey and exploring technology solutions for automating and really making their strategy execution sustainable. So Cole, I'll start with you.
I think one of the first things is just when you jump in, don't think that it's all going to be done within a month. This is an ever-evolving process of understanding how your strategy works and putting it into the platform and understanding all the capabilities. We've been using ESM for 3.5 years or more, and we're still not aware of everything the platform can provide. And honestly, we're continuing to look at Plus Perform now and seeing how we can use that as an overlay also. So it's not going to happen overnight. It doesn't happen within a month. It's constantly evolving. And I think that's important to know. Be patient.
Well said. Ian?
I would say don't be afraid to get creative with something that, as I said, strategy reporting is deeply important, but often when if I was to ask for a meeting with you to say, hey, by the way, can we get ready for the upcoming strategy review meeting and put in your metrics and initiatives, make sure that everything is up to date, you might go, oh, I would rather have a lunch meeting instead. But if you can find a way to be creative and to incent folks making using the system, going in at the right time, and making quality updates, then you're going to be successful.
Excellent. And Robin?
I agree with everything. Just the old adage of letting people know what's in it for them, how it's going to save them time, how it's of benefit to them, how it's going to improve the organization's performance. So put it in the terms that they can understand and they can see the benefit of it.
Well said. Well, thank you all for your participation today. I do appreciate it. And thank you for the questions, audience.
Thank you.